Let's begin. My name is Brandon Carter, and I have been married to Vanessa for the last 17 years. We had a 16-year-old daughter, Emma, and I worked as a mechanical engineer at a major automobile company. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. My life was simple. I worked hard, came home, and provided for my family. I thought we were happy, but I was a fool. On a warm March afternoon, while I was in the middle of troubleshooting a malfunctioning assembly robot, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped the grease off my hands and glanced at the screen. Mark, neighbor calling. Mark was my next-door neighbor and a good friend, but he never called me during work. I frowned and answered, "Brandon, you need to get home. Now." His voice was frantic. My stomach twisted. "Why? What's wrong?" "There's a moving van in your driveway." I froze. My grip on the phone tightened. "A moving van?" "Yeah, a couple guys are loading furniture into it. Your wife is there too." The world around me blurred. "Vanessa?" I asked, my throat dry. "Yes, and there's another man with her." My breath caught. Another man? That was all I needed to hear. I didn't even clock out. I stormed to my boss's office, threw open the door, and barely managed to say, "I need to leave, right now." Without waiting for a response, I grabbed my keys, sprinted to the parking lot, and tore out of the lot, tires screeching against the pavement. As I drove, a single thought burned in my mind. This wasn't just a simple betrayal. This was war. I arrived home in less than 15 minutes, my heart slamming against my ribs. As I pulled into my street, my worst nightmare unfolded in front of me. A moving truck was parked in my driveway. Two burly men were hauling my furniture, my TV, my dining table, everything I had worked for, into the back of the van. And there, standing on the porch, directing them like some queen overseeing her castle, was Vanessa. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her. Tall, lean, smug. His arm was wrapped around her waist, and they were laughing. Something inside me snapped. I threw the car into park, jumped out, and stormed up the driveway. "Hey!" My voice boomed, stopping everyone in their tracks. The movers froze. Vanessa turned slowly, her face pale, and that smug bastard beside her. He barely glanced at me. Instead, he muttered under his breath, "Mind your own business." That was it. I lost it. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him crashing onto the pavement. He groaned, clutching his face. But I wasn't done. I pounced on him, fist after fist slamming into his pathetic, cheating face. "You think you can steal from me?" I snarled, landing another punch. In broad daylight. "Brandon, stop." Vanessa screamed, running toward us. I barely heard her. I grabbed my phone with one hand, keeping my grip on his collar. My knuckles dripped with blood. I dialed 911. "This is Brandon Carter. I caught a man stealing from my home. I have him subdued." The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. "Sir, step inside. Officers are on their way." I let out a cold laugh. "I can handle myself." Then, Vanessa screamed something that stopped my heart. "Stop it. Robert is my boyfriend." The world tilted. My breath left my lungs. I slowly turned to her, rage and disbelief swirling inside me. "What?" She lifted her chin. "You heard me. Robert is my boyfriend. We've been together for years." A cold silence stretched between us. And then, without warning, I drove my foot straight into Robert's gut, making him curl up like a dying cockroach. "You're my wife," I spat, voice shaking with fury. "And you have a damn boyfriend." I kicked him again. Watching him writhe in pain brought me no satisfaction. But I wasn't finished. Sirens wailed in the distance. The two movers, who had been watching the show, exchanged amused glances. I guess they were enjoying the drama. I turned to the moving truck and asked, "Why is this here?" Robert groaned, but stayed silent. So, I kicked him again. The police cars arrived, officers stepping out with caution. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered officer, put a firm hand on my chest. "Step back, sir." I obeyed, breathing hard. "I'm the one who called." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" I jerked my chin toward Robert, who was still curled up like a pathetic worm. He was stealing from my home. My neighbor saw everything. The officer turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am, is this true?" Vanessa hesitated. Then, with defiance, she said, "I was taking my half of the furniture." The officer's jaw clenched. "Did you inform your husband?" Vanessa swallowed. "No." The officer sighed. "Then this is theft." Vanessa's face paled. The officer turned to me. Do you want to press charges? I smirked. Not yet. Vanessa spun toward me, eyes blazing. Brandon, please. I cut her off. You deserve everything that's coming to you. She flinched, because she knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. The police officer gave Vanessa one last look before turning back to me. Sir, you have every right to press charges. Given that she attempted to remove assets from the home without prior legal agreement, this can be considered theft, he explained. Vanessa's face turned ashen. I glanced at her, arms crossed. She had the audacity to cheat on me and try to rob me blind, yet she still expected me to play nice. I'll think about it, I said coolly, making sure she understood I held all the power now. The officer gave a nod before addressing Vanessa. For now, you can take your personal belongings and leave, but nothing more. If you attempt to take anything else, your husband has the right to call us again, and next time, we won't be so lenient. Vanessa gaped at him like a fish, her mouth opening and closing. This is my house, she shrieked. I deserve to live here. The officer gave her a deadpan stare. Actually, this house is in Mr. Carter's name, meaning you have no legal right to it unless a judge rules otherwise in divorce proceedings, which, by the way, will now favor him due to your actions today. Her face crumpled. I could tell it was finally hitting her. She was losing. I turned to the two movers, who looked like they were having the time of their lives watching the chaos unfold. Put everything back, I ordered. With smirks, they shrugged and started carrying the furniture back inside. Vanessa stomped her foot. No, stop. The officer shot her a glare. Ma'am, unless you want to be arrested, I suggest you comply. Vanessa whirled toward me, eyes blazing with fury. You're going to regret this, Brandon. I gave her a slow, satisfied smirk. Oh, Vanessa, I haven't even started yet. I had a plan. A brutal, precise, and unforgiving plan. First, I needed to cut off her safety nets. Step 1. Financial annihilation. I logged into our joint bank account that evening. Balance, $24,357. With a smirk, I withdrew every single cent, leaving exactly $2. She wouldn't get a dime. Step 2. No more free ride. Next, I called our insurance companies, 401k managers, and my employer. Remove Vanessa Carter from all my beneficiary lists, I told them. By morning, her name was erased from every policy, every account, every single financial safety net she thought she had. Step 3. Career destruction. Vanessa worked for a prestigious real estate firm, where they had a strict no-office romances policy. I had proof she had been screwing Robert for years. So, I sent an anonymous email to their HR department, attaching pictures, messages, and bank transactions of her spending money on weekend getaways with Robert. By noon, Vanessa called me. Vanessa, you bastard. I got fired. I chuckled. Oh no, how terrible. She was seething. You're going to pay for this. I grinned. I already have. 17 years, to be exact. Now it's your turn. And I hung up. Now, it was time to deal with Robert. My best friend, Mason, was a former private investigator. He had been digging into Robert for days. Turns out, Robert was a con artist. 2 previous women had filed fraud charges against him. He had $50,000 in unpaid gambling debts. He had a history of using women for money, then dumping them. I laughed. So Vanessa ruined our family for this loser? Perfect. I made a call to one of his creditors. Hey, I have a tip for you, I said smoothly. That $50,000 Robert owes. I know exactly where he is. By the next morning, Vanessa called me again. Vanessa, they're after him. They're after me. These men came to my apartment demanding money. I smirked. That sounds like a you problem. She sobbed. Brandon, please. They said they'll hurt me if he doesn't pay. I let that sink in. Then, I said the words I've been waiting to say for months. You should have thought of that before you betrayed me. And I hung up. A week later, Robert fled town. Before he left, he emptied their joint bank account, Vanessa's last safety net. She had nothing left. No job, no money, no lover, no home. And then, the final cherry on top. I had filed for divorce the moment she cheated. And, thanks to my ironclad prenup, she was entitled to nothing except child support, which I would gladly pay. For our daughter, not for her. 2 months later, Vanessa sat in divorce court, looking defeated, hollow, broken. She had dark circles under her eyes. She had lost everything. When the judge ruled in my favor, awarding her nothing but temporary child support, she broke down crying. "This isn't fair," she sobbed. I smirked. "Fair? You threw away our marriage for Robert. Now he's gone. And so is your life." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake." I leaned forward, voice calm and cold. "Oh, I know. And now you get to live with it." I turned and walked away. She screamed my name, but never looked back. 3 months later, I was happier than ever. Emma had stayed with me, realizing what a fraud her mother was. One evening, while reading the newspaper, my phone buzzed. "Vanessa, unknown number, I miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message. Then I deleted it. She was just another ghost of my past now, and I had no regrets. Vanessa had always been the kind of woman who thrived in comfort. She loved lavish dinners, weekend getaways, shopping sprees, and the security of a stable home, all of which I had provided for her without question for 17 years. She had taken all of it for granted, believing that no matter what happened, she would always land on her feet. But now, she was starting to understand the reality of her situation. With no job, no home, and no money, she had been forced to crash on a friend's couch, the same friends who had once admired and envied her lifestyle. But admiration turns to pity fast, and pity turns to annoyance even faster. It wasn't long before she started noticing the growing irritation in their eyes every time she borrowed money, the hesitation in their voices when she asked to stay just a little longer. One by one, those so-called friends stopped returning her calls, started making excuses, started putting distance between themselves and the woman who had nothing left to offer. The first real crack in her foundation came when she called her parents, a desperate, last-ditch effort to seek some kind of support. Her father answered the call, his voice gruff and unimpressed. "Vanessa," he sighed, already sounding exhausted. She swallowed hard. "Dad, we know what happened." His voice was cold. "Your mother and I warned you. We told you not to destroy your marriage. We told you Brandon was a good man. And what did you do? You threw it all away for some scumbag." Tears pricked at her eyes. I made a mistake." He scoffed. "A mistake? Vanessa, you ruined your life over a 5-year affair with a con man. What did you think was going to happen?" She squeezed her eyes shut. I need some help, just for a little while." "No." The answer was immediate, sharp and final. Her breath hitched. "What?" "We're not helping you," he repeated, his tone unwavering. "You're an adult, Vanessa. Figure it out." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Dad, please." "I have nothing more to say," he muttered, then hung up the phone. Vanessa stared at the screen in shock, as the weight of her father's rejection crushed down on her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt completely, utterly alone. She had burned every bridge, and now she had no one left to turn to. For the next several weeks, Vanessa's life became a daily battle for survival. With no savings, she had no choice but to sell the few valuables she had left, just to afford motel rooms and cheap meals. She bounced between small, run-down motels, always trying to stretch every last dollar, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, she found herself sitting in a dingy diner, scrolling through job postings on her phone, the same phone she once used to text Robert while lying in bed next to me. She clicked on one listing. Waitress needed. Immediate start. Low experience required. Her stomach churned at the thought. Vanessa had always looked down on minimum wage workers. She had spent years priding herself on being a successful woman, the kind of woman who wore designer heels, drove a sleek luxury car, and never had to scrub a table in her life. But now, she was out of options. With a deep, shuddering breath, she tapped the apply button. And just like that, Vanessa Carter, former real estate agent, former upper-class housewife, former woman who had everything, became a lowly diner waitress. Her fall from grace was now complete. Her first day at the diner was a nightmare. She had no experience, no patience, and no clue how exhausting the job would be. She wore a cheap polyester uniform, one that was too tight and smelled like old grease. The manager, a gruff, no-nonsense man in his 50s, handed her a notepad. "Tables 1 through 6 are yours. No mistakes, no attitude. If you mess up, you're gone." She nodded, humiliated but silent. By the end of the shift, her feet were throbbing, her back ached, and her hands smelled like stale coffee and sweat. She had spent 10 hours on her feet, dealing with rude customers, impatient families, and messy tables. And for what? A measly $68 in tips and a $9 per hour paycheck. It was barely enough to cover rent for the tiny, roach-infested apartment she had managed to find. She went home that night, collapsing onto the thin mattress on the floor, staring up at the water-stained ceiling. This wasn't the life she had planned for herself. This wasn't the life she had imagined when she left her marriage for Robert. She had believed she was trading up. Instead, she had destroyed herself. And it was all her fault. I hadn't seen Vanessa in months. To be honest, I didn't think about her much anymore. I was rebuilding my life, focusing on work, and spending time with Emma, who had completely cut her mother off. But one evening, I stopped by a diner to grab some coffee. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. Then, as I walked toward the counter, I heard a familiar voice. "Welcome to Millie's Diner. What can I get you?" I froze, and when I looked up, my breath caught in my throat. There she was, Vanessa, wearing a faded uniform, dark circles under her eyes, looking thin, exhausted, and barely holding herself together. Our eyes met, her face drained of color. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us. Then, with a small smirk, I said, "I'll take a black coffee." She swallowed hard. "Brandon." I tilted my head. "That's sir to you, isn't it?" She flinched but nodded. "Yes, sir." She turned, hands trembling as she poured the coffee. I leaned forward. "By the way," I said, my voice low and calm, "I want you to know, I don't hate you." Her eyes widened. You don't." I smiled. "No," I whispered. "I just don't care anymore." She inhaled sharply, like I had just stabbed her through the heart. I grabbed my coffee, tossed a $100 bill on the counter, and walked out, leaving her to drown in the life she created for herself. Vanessa stood frozen behind the counter of the diner long after I left, her hands gripping the edge so tightly that her knuckles turned white. My words echoed in her mind, over and over again. "I don't hate you. I just don't care anymore." Those words cut deeper than any insult ever could. If I had screamed at her, if I had cursed her, if I had wished suffering upon her, she could have handled that, because that would have meant I still felt something. But I didn't. And that was the worst punishment of all. When she finally managed to move again, she turned toward the kitchen, shoulders slumped, her heart pounding with regret. She barely heard her manager calling her name, telling her to stop standing around and get back to work. The weight of her choices pressed down on her like an anvil. She had walked out of my life thinking she had won. She thought she had found something better, something exciting, something that would make her happier than I ever did. Instead, she had thrown everything away for a man who used her, stole from her, and left her to rot. Now, she was nothing, a washed-up former housewife, barely making enough money to survive. Every time she wiped down a table, every time a rude customer snapped their fingers at her, every time she carried heavy trays while her feet screamed in pain, she was reminded of what she had lost. The life of comfort, the home, the respect, the security. It was all gone, and it was her fault. 2 weeks passed. Vanessa barely scraped together enough to pay rent for her small, run-down apartment. The walls were thin, the plumbing barely worked, and her neighbors were loud at all hours of the night. She started selling whatever she had left. A designer purse she once flaunted proudly, gone for a fraction of what she paid for it. Jewelry that Robert had gifted her in the early days of their affair, pawned off to cover groceries. Each sale chipped away at her pride. She had once looked down on struggling people, turning up her nose at those who couldn't afford the luxuries she took for granted. Now, she was one of them, and it was humiliating. The only thing she still had was her car, the same car I had bought for her 5 years ago. She held onto it like a lifeline, knowing that without it, she would be completely stranded. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before she lost that too. She started thinking about calling me. Just the thought made her stomach turn. She knew how I would react, knew that I would see her suffering and feel nothing. But she had no one else. Her pride had already taken so many hits. What was one more? With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and dialed my number. I answered after the second ring. "Vanessa." She swallowed. "Brandon, I just wanted to talk." I was silent for a long moment. Then I let out a slow, measured breath. "What do you want?" Her throat tightened. She almost couldn't say it, but desperation overpowered her shame. I need help. I let her words hang in the air for a long moment. She had probably imagined this conversation 100 times in her head, rehearsing different ways to make herself sound pitiful, to make me feel sorry for her. But there was no sympathy left. Help, I repeated, my voice calm, almost amused. Help with what exactly? She sniffled. Brandon, I don't have anywhere to turn. I lost my job. I barely have money for rent. And I don't know what to do anymore. I leaned back in my chair, letting her suffer in the silence. That sounds rough, I said finally, but I failed to see how that's my problem. She let out a quiet sob. Please, just a loan. Something to help me get back on my feet. I'll pay you back, I swear. I chuckled darkly. Vanessa, the last time you made a promise to me, it was on our wedding day. And we both know how that turned out. She let out a choked sob. I was stupid. I didn't see what I had until it was gone. I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. No, you saw. You just didn't care. Until now. She tried again. Please, Brandon. I don't have anyone else. That's funny, I said, because I remember you saying that Robert was your one true love. Maybe you should call him instead. She was openly crying now, but I felt nothing. You don't understand. He's in jail. He left me with nothing. I let out a soft laugh. Oh, I understand perfectly. You threw away a good man for a liar and a thief. And now, you're suffering the consequences. I let a few more seconds of silence pass, just to let the weight of her desperation settle in. Then, I spoke the final word she needed to hear. This conversation is over, Vanessa. You made your choice. Now live with it. I hung up. She didn't call again. Vanessa's life continued its downward spiral. The diner cut her shifts due to low business, leaving her barely able to pay rent. Her car was eventually repossessed when she fell behind on payments. She was forced to take the bus, a humiliating experience for someone who once scoffed at public transportation. Emma refused to see her, still furious at her mother's betrayal. Vanessa had truly lost everything. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I saw her again. She was sitting on a park bench, staring at the ground, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked so different from the woman I once knew. She used to be vibrant, confident, full of pride. Now, she was hunched over, small, fragile, and utterly broken. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But then, I remembered. I remembered the nights I had come home late, exhausted from work, only to find her texting Robert in secret. I remembered how she had laughed at my pain when I found out the truth. I remembered how she had tried to steal from me, thinking she would walk away with half of everything. No, she deserved this. She noticed me then, her eyes widening. For a moment, she looked like she was about to speak, to call out to me. I gave her one last look. Then I turned and walked away. She was nothing to me now. Months passed. Vanessa faded into a distant memory. Emma and I had built a new life, free of betrayal and lies. I had started dating again, something I never thought I'd be able to do. One day, Emma asked me, Dad, do you ever think about Mom? I shook my head. Not anymore. And for the first time, I truly meant it. One last time she tried. I received a letter in the mail. It was from Vanessa. She wrote pages of apologies, begging me to talk to her, to give her a chance to make amends. I read every word. Then, without hesitation, I tossed the letter into the trash. Vanessa had once believed she could walk all over me and still land on her feet. She was wrong. She had gambled with her life. And she lost. Forever. And as for me, I had never been happier.